Founder FM. You're listening to Founder FM with your host, Graham Brown.
Hello and welcome to Founder FM. Today we're talking to a serial entrepreneur, founder of ArtWeb, co-founder of Cheapo, Chris Kirkland. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Graham. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. We are in the same city, Tokyo, Japan. So we're going to talk a bit about your businesses here and also how you got here. You describe yourself as a serial entrepreneur. I'm interested to know a little bit about what's that about. Tell us a bit about your business life and what a serial entrepreneur is, Chris.
So firstly, I think I should have said parallel entrepreneur because I'm doing several things at once. Serial implies you do one after the other, but that's not really the case.
A parallel entrepreneur is somebody who's got a few things on the go.
Exactly. I think that's more realistic. You know, the word serial entrepreneur is often banded around, but most of the guys I know or women I know, they're doing several things. So it's parallel, I think.
Well, we just had a chat about this off air of being a parallel entrepreneur. Somebody with projects on the go. So you're doing this ArtWeb, which is was your original business, right? Your mainstay.
Well, it was actually my fifth business.
Fifth business.
As you know, statistically speaking, 1 in 5 businesses succeeds and the rest fail.
Right.
So I was kind of bang on the money with my fifth business. That's the one that actually worked.
Well, just out of interest, what were you doing the other 4?
Oh God, the other things were just sort of early 20s delusional ideas, like recording studio, doing concerts. Nothing really interesting to speak of. But
you arrived at ArtWeb. That was the one that
was the one that stuck. That was the one that grew and made money, and I've been running it for about a decade now.
Right. So you started that over 10 years ago. Do you start that before you came to Japan?
I did, yeah.
Right.
I started it about a year before I came here.
Right. So you were running ArtWeb. You were generating an income by the time you came to Japan?
Almost.
Right.
It was a bit of a gamble coming here because I didn't know anything about Japan. And I just kind of turned up here on holiday. And my plan was to move or to travel more. That's why I started ArtWeb, something I could do remotely. But it was early days and it wasn't making that much money. But I just, I was here for, I think about 5 days and I was like, I'm just going to stay here. Bugger it. I'm going to skip my return flight and just figure it out. And that's basically how I ended up staying in Japan.
And I know we're on tape. How did that work out with your visa?
It's not actually that tricky. I had a business that had existed for over a year. So I could apply for basically the idea is you opening a representative office in Japan. Right. So it was a little bit of a fiddle. There was some paperwork and bureaucracy, but it wasn't that expensive. And ultimately, I was surprised at how easy it was because it was quite an early fledgling business with not much revenue. I was this, long-haired 27-year-old, and I was surprised that I was accepted so easily to get a work visa to stay here.
So you got, what was it, a business visa?
It was, technically it was the intra-company transferee visa. That's the category that it was under.
Okay, so you were here to set up your regional office in Tokyo.
Exactly.
Right, okay, great. Wow. If it checks the boxes, let's do it.
Yeah.
So you came here and you set up Cheapo after that. What was the story with that? How did you get into Cheapo?
So Cheapo was born when me and my friend and now co-founder Greg were just chatting over drinks about business ideas, and we both felt that Tokyo needed a blog about living here or coming here on the cheap, because no one was really doing that. But we'd both been living here on a fairly meager budget for years, and there was all these kind of reports of Tokyo having ludicrously expensive coffees, multi-$1,000 apartments, and we were like, well, I'm not actually spending that much money. The world needs to know that it's actually not that expensive here. So that was about 4 years ago now, And yeah, we just started off, wrote a few articles ourselves, threw up a quick WordPress theme. You know, we MVP'd it in about a week, and the rest is history, as they say.
It was a blog to start off with, right? Did you have any idea of what it was going to become? Or was it just, let's just do this and see what happens?
So because it was so easy to test, we just thought we'd test it. I think at the time we had visions that it could be something that was very popular, but we're both seasoned entrepreneurs and, we were very realistic and cautious. We planned for it. We planned for failure and hoped for success.
Right.
And
very wise.
Yeah, we got it right. So we got the success.
Right. 4 years on, you're doing over 500,000 page views a month, on your way to 1 million page views a month. That's pretty impressive in terms of traffic. What did it take to get to that point?
So I think there's several ingredients to this delicious cake. Firstly was recognizing the opportunity. I think that's one of the key ones. Like, I don't think you could start Tokyo Cheapo now because we've already started it.
Right.
Basically, there wasn't anybody writing from our kind of perspective about Tokyo not being that expensive and how to get the most out of it on a budget. So that was one thing. The other thing, I guess me and Greg are quite experienced. We know how to do SEO. We know how to run media sites. We've both got experience writing. So, making sure the quality of the content is high was also key. Because, if you write lower quality articles and lots of them, sure, you might get like a load more. You might get people coming because you've got lots of articles, but they won't be sticking because if they're not very good, people will bounce. They won't read them. They won't take it seriously. We're very selective with who we let write for us. We've got very high standards, and we've got like a strong sort of editorial ethic behind what we're doing. So, having high quality, I think that's another one of the key ingredients. And yeah, I think just the other ingredients are varied, but just generally kind of having a clue of how to run a team, how to kind of do social media.
Okay, so it's worked pretty successful now. It's generating revenue. You've got 500,000 visitors coming a month. There must be a lot of opportunities coming your way. And I guess you must get contacted a lot by people because they realize you've got the eyeballs, especially a niche market as well. How do you sort of deal with that? You must get a lot of noise that comes through into the email inbox on a daily basis.
You'd be surprised, actually. We're only starting to now. We've been, I guess we've been like a pretty big site now for a year or two. So finally, the Japanese business world is kind of starting to realize that we exist. But for the first 3 years, only English-speaking people knew who we were. So we'd be going into meetings with government officials, airlines, all these kind of things, and who are these scruffy guys? But the tide seems to be changing now. We're getting a lot of stuff in our inbox every day, but still, it's tricky because most of the people that we would do business with, if we're talking on the sort of B2B level, would be Japanese businesses, and there's no one Japanese on our team. It's just me and Greg and our writers. And although we can speak some Japanese and we know the business culture, it's very hard for us to be effective in these business scenarios.
Well, I'm curious as well about the whole thing about you setting up a business in Japan. I mean, living in Japan's one thing, right? Learning the language is another thing. But setting up a business and running it in Japan is a completely different level, isn't it? I'm just curious as to what kind of challenges, apart from what you just mentioned about the language, you faced.
Yeah, it's very tricky doing business here. And in a sense, I feel like I'm only kind of semi-doing business here because, the art web business has got, it's fairly small here. It's mainly a European business. And Tokyo Cheapo, really most of the revenue is coming from global companies that pay us from their Singapore office. There's almost negligible. We have a few business deals in Tokyo, but the challenges, there are numerous. I think sure, the language differences and the bureaucracy, there's things like this. But to me, I think, the biggest problems are more just like the business culture itself, and finding people you can hire or partner with. It's very difficult. And I think you can't get that far unless you've got like local support.
So have you sort of gone out of your way to learn Japanese for business? Because I mean, you can speak Japanese, I can speak Japanese, but speaking in business, again, it's like learning another language, isn't it? I mean,
totally. The keigo, the honorific language, is really hard.
How do you get on with that?
I'm coming to the conclusion that it's probably better for me to spend my time on other things than speaking Japanese. I've got several colleagues, friends who have businesses here, and they just do business in English. They say, if they can't deal with me in English, then it's probably a bad sign anyway. And they just take me much more seriously when I speak in English. So I'm kind of the opinion that you hire somebody who's a native speaker to do the Japanese speaking. Right. Otherwise, you're just speaking in English.
Right. To get up that learning curve, to get to fluency in business Japanese, it's a long way to go, isn't it? So that's a lot of your time. So you're making a decision: do I do this, or do I get somebody else in to do this for me?
And I'd say that it's actually our advantage being a foreigner. Speaking in English, it brings a different atmosphere to the table in a business setting.
Right.
And I think that's actually an advantage that we should play.
Okay, that's an interesting point, Chris. I've been to quite a few networking events recently. A lot of these are sort of, startup events, and dominated obviously by local Japanese, lots of corporates, suits, that kind of thing. I'm sort of like standing out as a foreigner wearing a pair of jeans. Now, I think a lot of people might feel uncomfortable in that situation and feel, I'm standing out like a sore thumb here. You say it's an advantage to be a foreigner in that kind of situation, or in business where maybe you're a little bit different or speak English in a world of Japanese. How is it an advantage?
Numerous levels. I think firstly, image-wise, we're the guys from the Silicon Valley startup world where they wear jeans and have beards. So it actually kind of fits a certain script for us to wear jeans. The other thing is, as we both know, the Japanese economy's been struggling for a long time, and people are kind of really looking for solutions and looking for new ways of doing things. So I don't think there's any harm at all in kind of being a representative of different ways of doing things, because it seems just totally backwards for people like you and I, with all our global experience, all our different experiences, to sort of squeeze into a suit and try and fit into the Japanese way of doing things. It's just like swimming upstream. We may as well kind of play our strengths, and those people who are interested and ready to learn from our way of doing things are going to be much more receptive to that than if we were sort of squeezed into a suit trying to speak in keigo.
That is an interesting point. That last bit as well, you said about people who are receptive to that, because they're there, aren't they? And it's sort of like, do you try to, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, do you try and, fit in and be liked by everybody? So, you try and be more like them and more, mirror of the people that you're trying to appeal to? Or do you go the other way and highlight your differences and say, screw it, this is me. You don't like me, take a hike. This is who I am. You might hate me. That's fine. I'm not interested in doing business with you. But for the people that do get that, they will, be magnetized and be attracted to that kind of person.
Yeah, that's the way I play it. I think there was a thread on Quora, something like, what are the dumbest things intelligent people do? And I think one of the top answers was they become lawyers in New York or something. And the reason it was is because being a lawyer in New York is extremely competitive and extremely hard. And it's like if they'd just taken their skills and intelligence and just applied it to a slightly more fringe, different thing, they would have been much more successful with much less effort. So I feel it's a bit like that situation. Like if you're trying to kind of get the contract with Toshiba, squeezing into suit, like lining up with everybody else, playing by the same rules. You're just on the lower ground. I think, play to your strengths, do what you feel comfortable with, and find what works around that.
It's great advice, but playing devil's advocate here, I imagine taking that path, you're facing doubt once in a while, right? Because if you did it the safe way, the Toshiba route, if you did the lawyer in New York route, then because everybody else is doing it, it's just what you need to do. You don't question it. But if you go the other way, like do what you do, move to a new country, set up a business, which was, it was a pioneer business. There was nobody else doing it. You didn't know if there was going to be a market for it, et cetera, et cetera. You must face doubt once in a while, right? And does that come into your mind?
Oh, yeah. I face doubt a lot. But I'm aware at some level it's very much a sort of animal emotion. It's kind of like, because I'm away from the herd, I've got this kind of instinct to get back in the herd, but it's illogical. It does not match to modern times. I mean, let me give you an example. So I'm a entrepreneur, self-made, bootstrapped entrepreneur with a couple of different businesses. And, for many people, that sounds like a really risky proposition. But, my risk is really distributed. I've got all these composite skills. I'm really not worried about financial crises and things like this. None of my businesses haven't even been affected by the financial crises. But if I'd taken the safe route, if I'd followed my other maths graduate friends into some financial job in London, sure, I might have had a big pay packet for a while, but I might have been made redundant. I might have this big mortgage. It's what people think is safe is often a fallacy. It's often like a sort of emotional thing. Just because that's what everybody else is doing, they'll feel safer doing it. But when I look at my situation logically, I think, I'm in a really strong, safe position.
Do your maths graduate friends get what you're doing?
I think some of them do, because my maths graduate friends, we were all the weirdos. We weren't
Right, okay.
normal. I shared a house with a French guy and a German guy. They were all already, unconventional. They were foreign students. The French guy actually wanted to be an actor. And actually, I think he did get made redundant, and I think he's gone back into acting,
Right.
much to his wife's dismay.
Yeah. But they didn't need much convincing. I'm just wondering if you had a few New York lawyer friends who probably looked at what you're doing and think, Chris, get a proper job.
I've always gravitated towards the weirdos and hippies. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, isn't that a key part of being an entrepreneur as well as building your own network, especially if you're moving to a new city like Tokyo? It's really important, isn't it, that the company you keep has a really profound impact on you. And often something that we don't realize, isn't it? Like what people talk about or what people say as in terms of their expectations or what people do can really impact the way we think and feel about our own lives and businesses.
absolutely, it's one of the kind of simplest hacks. Is surround yourself with people who are already further ahead at what you want to do or be. It's I'll give you a little example. I'm now, as you know, and as I think you are as well, I'm in a entrepreneur community of traveling entrepreneurs, the Dynamite Circle. And that really changed me joining that, because prior to that, most of my entrepreneur friends were based in Tokyo, working in offices. And here was me going kite surfing on Tuesdays, going to the beach, because that's the way I'd set my life up. That's what I wanted to do. But I was starting to question that behavior because no one else was doing it. I was just on my own whilst everybody else was in the office. Then I joined the DC and I met, hundreds of other people who are also kind of going to the beach on the Tuesday or living in Thailand or South America or whatever. And now I just feel really comfortable and normal. So, it was a real breakthrough for me, surrounding myself with more people who are like-minded and doing similar things.
Do you think if you hadn't have done that, you would have the doubt would have got to you at some stage and you would have probably edited what you were doing?
It's possible. I shudder to think what might have happened if I hadn't found more. I don't know. I think people like you and I are just increasing. So it was inevitable that I was going to connect with more people like yourself. But
You also, I mean, what's interesting, you run your own events in Tokyo as well. I think that's a key part of it, isn't it? People look around for events to go to, and often, I mean, if you have a specific interest or a niche lifestyle or whatever, often you can't find those events. So what you've done is you create your own, right? Like your Tokyo Cheapo hangouts and so on. That seems to be like, well, why not? Why don't you do that for yourself? It seems to be a hack that anybody could do, right?
absolutely. I think in this internet day of age, doing real in-person events is such a strong thing. And it's surprisingly easy. You really, you can call something a conference and it's just like in a room
Right.
that you got for free at a university or something. It's surprisingly easy to put something on and gather people, and it just creates a different perception as to who you are and what you're doing.
For sure. There was an article written a while back, which I can't remember who the author was, or put it in the show notes. Something along the lines of, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around with on a daily basis, right? On a regular basis. So if you think about the 5 people that you hang around with most, how they impact you, these events that you go to, how these people influence you and so on. Do you ever sort of think about that, the people around you in your small circle and how they're sort of shaping your business?
I do, yes. I think, since I made that shift and met all these other traveling entrepreneurs, I've really, really taken that to heart. And although I suppose the ecosystem of entrepreneurs is still quite small in Tokyo, I balance that by Skyping people a lot. I've got a lot of people all over the world, and I'm on Skype every week, connecting with old friends or new friends. So a lot of them, if I can't meet them in person, I still connect with them on Skype.
One thing about you, Chris, which I find inspiring, is that you seem to be incredibly productive. You've got 2 businesses on the go. You're running these events. You just literally, the last time I met you, you'd come back from a month in Thailand, not just long before, right? And you have this air of relaxed nature. You don't appear to be like as a hustler. What's going on? What's the secret?
As I was saying, I'm it's just a thin veneer, panicking underneath, just like everybody else. I suppose I could talk a bit about relaxing. I mean, I do meditate every day. I did martial arts for a long time. I've done a lot of work internally, so to speak, and I think that helps a huge amount. Because I think I'm naturally predisposed to anxiety. I was a very nervous teenager. It didn't stop me doing things, but I remember like my heart rate racing all the time. So I think for me it's been essential to get that under control. So I hear that a lot. People say, "You seem so relaxed," and I'm like, "Really?"
Look at it from my side.
Yeah.
But isn't that the thing? I think entrepreneurs are quite what's the word? Unrelaxed. They're kind of the agitated people at some point, aren't they? They're kind of that probably what drives them to become entrepreneurs. I mean, I am. I know that I can't relax on a beach, and it drives my wife nuts, right? I have to be sort of doing something or fidgeting, or that sort of constant fidgeting is like an energy which either destroys you or ends up turning you into a successful entrepreneur. I'm just wondering if, that's kind of like who we are, and we just have to kind of deal with it and work on ourselves internally like you have.
Yeah, I think there's certain personality types which do better as entrepreneurs for sure. And I think, the sort of always on fidgeting, doing type, like, or hustler type, if you keep hustling, keep doing something, eventually something's going to stick.
Yeah, that is true. And what about yourself on a daily basis? How do you organize your day? Are you super busy? Do you because you don't have an office here with a big staff in Japan? What do you do in terms of organizing your day?
So we don't have an office with loads of staff, but I do have staff. I do have, I suppose, about I've got 4 people working immediately underneath me, and then we've got numerous other people as writers as well. So there is quite a lot of management. But I guess on a day-to-day basis, I'm trying to keep a nice, healthy work-life balance because even running one business, there's always like an infinite number of things to do. Running two or two and a half, there's this exponential amount of things like in my Asana task list. But I'm very much aware that I'm the CEO, I'm the director, so I have to think slightly differently. I shouldn't be so task oriented. I should be more like vision oriented. So I'm often trying to, like afternoons, I'll just go for walks and just like let myself think. I won't stress out about the tasks on my list. I'll be more concerned about, what's the long-term picture here? What's the long game that I'm playing here?
And does that work for you, taking time away from your desk, so to speak, and getting out there, just, maybe even leaving your phone behind? Can you do that?
I should do it more. I don't know about yourself, but I've definitely got an internet addiction. I have to.
Yeah.
I've done a lot to turn that off. I don't have Facebook on my phone. I've disabled notifications. But I try. I often go to the beach or go for walks in the countryside. I often do things to get away, and I think in this day and age, really we couldn't be doing enough of that. I think the more you do that, the better.
Is that something that you've got better at because I imagine you're getting busier and busier as well with your businesses?
Yeah, I am getting better. I've kind of I think about a year ago, maybe a year and a half, I had a sort of penny drop moment. And in fact, I'll tell you a story. My friend James Ferrer, who you maybe know, he runs a business called Tokyo Wheel. He lives in Thailand most of the time. And I was chatting with him early this year, and he said that how he doesn't use his laptop anymore. The way he runs his company is he goes for walks or cycles with his phone, and he uses voice to typing to kind of type emails and stuff, or he's like doing Skype conferences with the staff. And his 4 focuses are something like team building, vision, and 2 other things I forget, but like they were kind of big overall things. And like his working day is more like exercising. He's like walking through beautiful Thai countryside whilst like speaking to his staff on his phone or just like jotting ideas down. And I thought, yeah, that's really smart. That is how to be a CEO. You're focused on the big things while the other people who are working for you are focused on the kind of day-to-day execution.
And so did you put a plan into place when you sort of discovered this option?
Yeah, I suppose it's more of a realization that I need to work towards. I need to focus on those CEO type things and not get bound up in the task list, because I think we're very a to-do list that we can check off. That's very satisfying for our sort of human emotions or whatever. But I think it's very misleading for people who are business owners, because the success of your business is not contingent on how many things you checked off your list.
Right. Even though it feels like you're achieving something.
Exactly.
Are you sort of aware of what the one thing that you do in your business is that adds the most value? I think, and just let me preface that question, because I was always looking for the answer to that question. If I was only to do one thing today, what would it be? Because I think, when you're a CEO and you've got staff, you're dealing with so many different things, as we've already discussed. And actually to take time out and think about what that one thing is quite hard, because you never really get the perspective to understand what it is. But have you got close to that? Do you understand what it is yet? Have you discovered it?
I think it changes over time, and sometimes you'll know what it is. Sometimes you'll be grasping to find out what it is. You'll be throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks. I think in my particular situation, it's kind of a yes and a no answer. I don't, the Tokyo Cheapo business, it's not like we've kind of really nailed it, but it's in growth mode. So I'm not too worried about nailing it, because all the arrows are pointing in the right direction. Yeah.
And the things change as well so fast in the growth mode as well. So you can't sort of, commit yourself to one thing and then that to be different down the line, right?
Yeah, I think there was a blog post I read recently called Anti-Fragile Planning by Taylor Pearson. And I quite liked his approach of he did set long-term goals and objectives, but he revised them on a regular basis. So I think it was the sort of longest sort of set period of planning would be a quarter. And so the idea is you kind of think about long-term things, you set a course, but you're able to change that course at a fairly short time frame.
Do you do that yourself? Do you write down your goals and say, right, this year I'm going to make X 100,000 and do several million in page views? How do you think it work for you?
I do annual reviews. At the end of every year, I review what happened that year and set targets for the year. And I normally chop them into quarterly stages. And I'm reviewing every week, every Sunday. I sit down and I do a weekly review, which isn't just a business thing. It's like how am I feeling? Am I happy? Am I getting enough exercise? So I just kind of do a general weekly review. And so I've kind of got like the biggest goals I'm chasing are normally like quarterly ones, and they're subject to being revised anyway. I think it depends what kind of business you're running. There's no like one case fits all, but
right.
I suppose if it's a newer business, if it's a growing young business, it's probably smarter to be more agile and be ready to, jump on a ship that's traveling at a greater velocity.
Very true. But it seems like you're able to self-coach yourself in a way and sort of take a step back from where you are and have a look at where you're going to, which I think is important to have that perspective rather than just to be constantly in the whirlwind that is running a business.
Well, I think it's 20 years of making mistakes.
Let's talk about 20 years of making mistakes. What if you were to look back on the younger Chris 20 years ago and in some sort of Christmas carol type apparition, you'd go back to the younger Chris and sort of tell him what he needs to know, avoid some of the more costlier mistakes. What have you how have you changed as an entrepreneur of those 20 years, and what sort of things did you think back then which you now know not to be true?
So, starting from the early days, I don't know if I would give myself too much advice, because I think the best advice to early entrepreneurs is just to try stuff and make mistakes. I think, I was way too trusting in the beginning. I lost money from trusting the wrong people. But ultimately, I think those are actually quite useful lessons. So, but further on, when I was a little bit more experienced, I think the main thing that I would have advised myself would be to slow down. Because, I burnt myself out quite badly. My early 30s, I was burning the candle at both ends, and I suffered quite badly because of that. So I think just, slowing down and relaxing would probably be the key advice I would have given myself. So
you were working too hard? You were doing too much? What was the story back then?
I was working and playing too hard. I was one of these typical young entrepreneurs doing like diet hacking, sleep hacking, exercise stuff. I was pulling really long work hours and staying up late at night, hanging out with people. I was just, I thought like the sky's the limit. I'm invincible. And I tested my limits, and I made myself ill. I was really, I was out of the picture for quite a long time. I really burnt myself out.
Right. But what did that teach you?
It took me quite some time of being burnt out to learn how to just be more humble and just to move slower. Because I think the real lesson was it's not about 100% effort. It's about kind of having balance and doing the right thing at the right time. Like pulling 14-hour work days, it's just madness. It's really, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're not getting paid on an hourly basis. Your kind of vision and some decisions that you make will ultimately change your future. It's not like the 14 hours day after day. That's just going to give you grey hairs and
right,
end your life sooner.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's also that thought that how you live the rest of your life starts today, right? It doesn't get any better or worse. This is how it is. So if you think you're going to work crazy hard and then put your feet up ain't going to happen. I think that's the myth that a lot of entrepreneurs, that's what I had. It sounds like you had as well. You think that you're going to give up several years of your life for a better future, and giving up means giving up everything. Whereas now you realize actually that's kind of BS. What you need to do is you can do all these things, but just kind of balance it out right here and now, and live it as it will be from today.
I totally agree.
Well, there you go. So do you sort of see young entrepreneurs coming through now, I mean, in your circle, making those kind of mistakes that you made?
I see some, yeah. I do every now and then try and warn people off burning themselves out. But one thing that strikes me by entrepreneurs that, say, a decade or so younger is they just seem so much more wise than I was when I was their age.
Oh, really?
I have a feeling it's because of the availability of information.
Right.
Like, if you think back a decade ago, YouTube was just starting. It's like, information access has really, really gone on in leaps and bounds. You can, if you want to learn something, you can just flip up to YouTube, type something in, and 30 minutes later, you know what you need to know.
Whereas we had to learn it all the hard way, is that what you're saying?
We had to go to the library.
It wasn't that bad, surely.
No, but I know. I remember when I was starting out business, the access to information I had seems so much more restricted.
That is interesting, isn't it? Because that then forced you to when I started business, I didn't know anybody around me who owned a business.
Yeah.
So even looking for advice, like in my sort of immediate family, my immediate network, nobody was running a business. They were sort of self-employed people, like self-employed, skilled people.
Yeah.
They kind of weren't running a business that I was thinking about. So the only thing I knew was just, go to the, what was it called? Like the Business Advice Center, which would be like, there'd be one in every city, which is run by the local government or something, which is, you'd go and get the files out and, the photocopies and that kind of thing.
I've been there, done that.
That was all that's available. And then you just, go and start a business, see what happens. It's crazy. It's like, today may be a little bit different. I don't know if that makes it any easier though, ultimately, because, if you've got all the information, maybe then the temptation is to not start until you get all the information, right? Whereas back then you just kind of, screw it, you got to do it.
Also, so many other people have the information as well. It's like there were advantages back in the earlier days to information being less accessible. It meant that, if you figured it out, you were one of the few that did.
Wow, yes, very true. And here you are, 20 years on, figuring it out still. We all are.
Yeah.
So do you think about where this is going to go in the future? I mean, Tokyo Cheapo is doing great. It's growing. You've also got the solid base, which is Art Web. You're growing into new areas as well. You've got Japan Cheapo and London Cheapo. You just told me a minute ago that you were finding balance. It seems like you're busier than ever, Chris.
Well, fortunately, I do have people working for me now. So, I'm trying to do as my friend James did, focus more on the bigger picture things. So although it might look like my business activities increased, I'm trying to, just delegate. So
it's tough, hey? But it's a skill we have to learn. What's the story with London Cheapo? That sounds like an exciting project.
Yeah. So we really want to take the project global and make it a thing. Like these city guides. The Cheapo's Guide to London, Cheapo's Guide to Singapore and whatnot. So, London is the first city outside of Tokyo that we've decided to tackle.
That seems like quite a challenge though, doesn't it? Because, you're based in Japan. People might say they're different markets. Does that not turn you off?
There are certainly challenges, certainly. I think it could be quite different to Tokyo. So we're very curious to see how it will turn out. It's not that difficult for us to run because we've got all this experience in doing media now. We've got everything systemized. So without us even being there, because in a sense, although me and Greg live in Tokyo, we're not really on the ground doing anything here most of the time. In fact, I'm in Thailand a lot of the time.
Exactly.
So anyway, we'll see. The next few months are key, to see what kind of response we get. Does Google like the site? Can we kind of leverage our brand and use it? Because already every month there are tens of thousands of people in the UK and London who are reading Tokyo Cheapo. So it's not like we don't have a zero reach.
Fantastic. And you've already got the template and the knowledge as well. So it's exciting times, Chris. It's great to share your journey. Where do people find out more about you?
So obviously, you can see London Cheapo, londoncheapo.com, Tokyo Cheapo, tokyocheapo.com. But about me, myself, personally, I have mrkirkland.com. That's Mr. as in MR, Kirkland as in Captain Kirk, land as in England.
Got it. We'll put it in the show notes. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Chris. It's been a pleasure and an inspiration. And you are the most relaxed entrepreneur that we've had on the show. So you qualify for that.
Excellent. I get that badge.
Yes. Great. Well, let's see how it goes with your other projects as well, with London Cheapo and Japan Cheapo. We'll get an update down the road, see how things are going.
Awesome. Thanks, Graham.
Founder FM, voice of the entrepreneur. Find out more at www.founderfm.com.